All right, welcome in everybody listening on AMP. We welcome you there. I invite you to subscribe to us on AMP to get all your audio needs for some good NBA talk. Listening and watching on YouTube, we appreciate your subscription there as well. I am joined now by my good friend, longtime colleague, Howard Beck, contributor for GQ Sports, contributor to the Locked On Podcast Network, doing a great job covering these NBA playoffs for those two outlets. And Howard, this is probably not going to be an episode that's going to please the people of Denver, because the people in Denver want us to spend the day after the Nuggets triumph over the Los Angeles Lakers talking about the Nuggets, talking about how Denver advances to the first finals in franchise history, talking about Nikola Jokic casting aside the haters to win the Western Conference Finals MVP, talking about the rise of Jamal Murray. But on this show, we got to talk about LeBron James. And we got to talk about the possibility that LeBron James could have played his final game. To recap for people that didn't see what happened on Monday night, in the aftermath of the Game 4 loss, a game that LeBron James played 48 minutes in, scored 40 points, had 10 assists, had 9 rebounds, a tour de force for a 38-year-old in that position. LeBron addressed the media and hinted, not so subtly, that he could retire at the end of the season. Said to the media he had a lot to think about. He subsequently told ESPN's Dave McMenamin, he confirmed that he was talking about the possibility he could retire and walk away. So let's dive into this, Howard. This was, while this was a statement that was made in the aftermath of a grueling game and what has been a grueling postseason, you and I both know that there's nothing that LeBron does that isn't calculated. Everything he does has a purpose to it. And whatever the reasons were, LeBron came into that press conference wanting to drop those breadcrumbs. There were a couple of times when he was asked about his future, he said he didn't want to get into it. And then the very last question that was asked, that really didn't have anything to do with next season. At the end of his answer, LeBron went that way and said, I've got a lot to think about as far as my basketball future. So tell me what your reaction was listening to, watching, reading the comments from LeBron James after the game on Monday.
Yeah, and look, apologies to Nuggets fans, but I will say I did spend 35 minutes on the Locked On Nuggets podcast with our friend Matt Moore discussing the Nuggets at length. We can do both in this industry, right? We may over-index occasionally on the Lakers, on LeBron, on some of the glamour teams and some of the big names. We do that. We're prone to it. But there's plenty of content out there praising the Nuggets as well, and they deserve all of it. But when the greatest player of the last 20 years, one of the greatest, and some people would say the greatest of all time, is openly throwing out the possibility of retirement, you cannot just ignore it. You can't downplay it. You can't say we'll get to it after we praise Jokic and the Nuggets. Like, it's a pretty big freaking deal in this league. So yeah, Chris, you decided we're going there today, and I'm with you. We got to go there. I thought the exact same thing you did watching that press conference unfold, which was LeBron was asked 3 different times over the course of 12 questions, what do you think about next year, the roster, this, that? And he every single time was like, oh, I don't know who's going to be on the roster. He was very vague about next season when it regarded the Lakers as a whole or the roster and what they could do, how they could get further, how they could improve. And the last question, and I don't even remember what it was, but it was definitely not about his future specifically. He veered there, and he did it because they had already said, PR had already said, okay, last question, which I think was to Melissa Rowland from Fox. And LeBron had that waiting. He had that in his holster. He was waiting to throw out that line about his uncertainty about next season. And he did it knowing that that was his walk-off answer, where no one was going to be in a position to follow up and say, whoa, hold on. You didn't say the word retirement, but are you considering this? Now, Chris Haynes from Bleacher Report, Dave McMenamin from ESPN, they did follow up, and he did confirm in one way or another that, yes, everything is on the table. So what do we think? I'm not one who always goes straight to the Machiavelli card with LeBron. I know a lot of people are very, very jaded about his interactions with the media and the things he says, and I get it. He has done a lot of passive aggressive stuff over the years. He has done a lot of hints and manipulations. Like, yeah, he's calculated. This is one of the rare cases where I myself went straight there, because I don't think he has any desire to retire, given you said it, a tour de force in that game. Now, he's not the same guy he was. He can't take over every quarter of every game. They need, whether it's Anthony Davis, whether it's D'Angelo Russell, whether it's Kyrie Irving, oh my God, whether it's somebody who's going to step in and do a little bit more for them so that LeBron can be your knockout punch and not the guy you got to ride for 48 minutes. Clearly, he wants improvements if he's going to do this again. But all the other things, right? Like, he signed a contract that takes him through what, like, I think next year and possibly one more. He has talked for years about wanting to play long enough to play with his son, Bronny, who's coming into the league potentially a year and a half from now. And look, he is still playing at a high enough level that if he can nurse his way through a season, it's still on the table. It is still possible he could make another run to get that 5th ring. And as competitive as he is, as conscious of his legacy as he is, and as much as he wants to play with his son, I just cannot see him walking away at this moment, which leaves us with the obvious. Did he do this simply to put all the pressure in the world on the Lakers to do whatever it is that he feels he needs next? And we know that can cut both ways. He wanted them to trade for Russell Westbrook. It was a mistake. He wanted them to get rid of Russell Westbrook. They eventually did, I think a little too late, but it was the right move. Is this just him making sure, whether he has a specific request or just the vague outline of, I want to keep pressure on them to make sure that they do right by me? That's what this feels like more than anything. But I'm going to say that there's at least a 5 to 10% chance that he really could walk away.
Look, I think a couple of things can be true with this, these statements. This has been, I think, unquestionably the most challenging year of LeBron James's career. It began with a lot of drama at the start of the season, a sluggish start, all the attention paid to Russell Westbrook. It was just going south quickly, and that was very draining on that Lakers locker room. Then he has the injury that sidelined him for more than a month. Finally, they make a trade at the deadline or before the deadline. They get a bunch of new pieces. LeBron has to kind of help patch that together in between the time he was absent due to injury. And then he gets to the playoffs, and he's got to play a lot of minutes. Averaged about 38 minutes per game in the postseason. Against Denver, he averaged 43. In game 4, he played 48. So you combine the mental toll, the physical toll, the injury. There were a lot of factors that made me believe, as LeBron James sat up there in that moment, he was spent. I can buy that completely. But LeBron is the king of leverage. He has been for years. Ever since he went back to Cleveland on a short-term deal and continued to sign short-term deals, he has been using contracts as his leverage. He has been signing these short-term deals, not because he necessarily likes the flexibility to go somewhere else, but he wants to make sure that the pressure is on the organization that he's with to improve the team as much as possible, or be fearful that they could lose him. So this felt a lot like that. LeBron is under contract for one more year, but if the Lakers believe that the threat of a LeBron retirement is real, they're going to do whatever it takes to make sure he comes back. Because if he doesn't come back, this thing all unravels for them, Howard. This thing becomes, they're a lottery team without LeBron James next year, even with Anthony Davis, even with the pieces they got at the trade deadline. Now you pivot to, what could LeBron be thinking about? Trae Young was there. The Athletic reported him as a possibility. I'm not sure Trae Young is the answer. Trae Young has not done anything in the postseason, and his shooting has regressed over the last couple of years. I'm not a believer that Trae Young is the right fit with that group. Kyrie Irving is more interesting, and we've been talking about Kyrie and the Lakers for a couple of years now. LeBron knows Kyrie Irving. He knows he can win with Kyrie Irving. He also knows, after this Nuggets series, that D'Angelo Russell may not be the most trustworthy guy to have out there in a critical conference semifinals, conference finals, NBA finals. Russell's jump shot disappeared in the conference finals. And if he's not making shots, he's useless out there on the floor because he's not a defensive player. So maybe LeBron's, playing that series out against the Nuggets and going, maybe we would have had a chance if our starting point guard, wasn't shooting like 5 for 16 or whatever it was in some of these games. So by floating it out there that he could retire, all of a sudden he becomes a decision maker within that Lakers front office. He has the power to push a Kyrie Irving signing on the Lakers if he really wanted to. Now, I don't know if the Lakers at this point would go for it. They went for it before. The Russell Westbrook thing didn't work out. This one is even more difficult because to get Kyrie Irving, not only do you have to pay him a boatload of money, probably 4 years, close to $200 million, but you also would probably have to gut most of your roster. You would have to wave goodbye to Rui Hachimura, who has done a terrific job for them in multiple roles. You have to say goodbye to D'Angelo Russell. Maybe you can't afford Austin Reeves, which would be really tough because Austin Reeves has been a big part of that team's success this year. I'm most interested to see if that's what this comes down to. If LeBron really wants Kyrie Irving on this roster, and if the threat of him retiring is enough or makes the Lakers fearful enough that they will go out there and give him whatever it is that he wants.
We know this much, Chris. There's a palpable tension between LeBron and Laker decision makers, the front office. It was there throughout this past season. It was certainly there leading up to the trade deadline when they finally made the deals that he wanted them to make. Now, I'm not saying the specifics of those deals, but just the idea that it was time to move on from Westbrook and replenish the depth around him. Look, we can't let him off the hook for being a driving force behind the acquisition of Westbrook in the first place. So some of this depends on how the Lakers hierarchy now sees these series of decisions. When they look back, did we make a mistake listening to the first time? Because the first time he really wanted Westbrook and it didn't work out. And then when it went sour, we took all the hits for acquiring Westbrook and for still having him on the roster. And so there's that tension. They do the right thing by trading Westbrook and replenishing the depth and getting very good role players in Rui Hachimura in one deal, then D'Angelo Russell, Vanderbilt, Beasley in the other deal. They make the separate trade for Bamba, who didn't really factor into anything, but nevertheless, they realized that they were too top heavy and that Westbrook was the wrong fit. But both of those moves were essentially to keep LeBron happy and to do what he thought or they thought needed to be done to keep this team viable at a high level. So where does that leave them now? Do they feel burned too many times? Are they now going to stand up and say, look, we're just going to do what we think? We might do what you want, but we're not doing it because you want it, right? We got burned before pushing the buttons that you want us to push. Are they going to be bullied into by LeBron and his camp, signing a guy in Kyrie Irving, who, as you mentioned, he's going to want a max. He's going to want a 4-year max, and it's going to come at the cost of a bunch of their depth. Isn't that making the same mistake they already made before with Westbrook? Now you're top heavy with Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, and LeBron instead of Westbrook, Kyrie Irving, or Westbrook, AD, and LeBron. But at least in this case, Kyrie Irving is a better fit. He can shoot, occasionally defends, more so than Westbrook has in the course of his career. Kyrie Irving's a better player, and we know he's won a championship next to LeBron before. Maybe that gives you some comfort. The fact is, though, let's say that, okay, you get him. Let's say you still find a way to cobble enough depth together to make a run. Even if you win a championship at the end of this, and winning a championship makes everything else worthwhile. But at the end of it all, LeBron could still walk away at age 39. And now you've still got 3 years left of Kyrie Irving on a max deal, knowing, God knows what he's going to do next. And having seen what, all these messy exits for Kyrie in Cleveland and Boston and Brooklyn, having seen how badly things went in Dallas, I don't want to put that on Kyrie Irving. It was a short-term thing, and they didn't have enough time, and the Mavericks have 1,000 other problems with their roster. But still, if you're the Laker front office and Lakers ownership, you are looking at those last several stops of Kyrie Irving's and all of the chaos and saying, do I really want to go all in on that just because LeBron is pressuring us? Maybe there's another answer here, Chris. I don't know what it is. I do think it's a mistake to look, if Kyrie swapped out for D'Angelo Russell, fine, but it's going to cost you probably Rui Hachimura and or Jared Vanderbilt and or Austin Reeves. It's going to get really tough. And you need depth in this league, quality depth. They finally fixed that at the trade deadline. Are they going to undo it all in one more splashy move for another star? I'm not sure that's the right move. In fact, I don't think that's the right move at all. I think that they do have other options. We will see how that comes together as we get through the draft and into free agency. There may be other pieces. Maybe it's not another star. Maybe it's not a Kyrie Irving. Maybe it is simply re-signing a couple of your guys and finding some other way to maneuver for a couple of other second-tier type guys. But it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard because you're already up against it on the payroll, and because LeBron is going to turn 39 in December, and every year that passes is a little less that you can just ride him.
So I don't know that it's a binary choice where it's either sign Kyrie Irving and gut the roster or keep the roster and not sign Kyrie Irving. Right now, it kind of looks like it. But as you know, things change over the course of an offseason. A lot of different options somehow open up. I do think it was telling that at the exit interviews on Tuesday, you had Rob Pelinka come out and say, we intend to invest in our young players. We believe in this young core. We believe that continuity is key, which is something the Lakers haven't had for most of the last few seasons. I mean, through fault of their own, they have shaken up their roster multiple times since winning a championship in 2020. So Rob Pelinka seems to believe that continuity is the answer to some of the Lakers' problems. I am definitely leery about bringing back a team that has D'Angelo Russell as the starting point guard. I think Russell is capable of having big nights. We saw that in the postseason, but he's equally as capable of being a non-factor offensively and a net minus defensively. And that would worry me. The Lakers going to Dennis Schroeder probably happened a game or two too late. I understand you don't want to pull the plug that quickly on D'Angelo Russell, but Dennis Schroeder in game 4 was far more impactful than D'Angelo Russell was. So let me ask you this, and I'll frame it this way. Darvin Ham believes bringing this group back is the right thing to do, has potential. Some of the players that talked on Tuesday believe bringing this whole group back has, high level potential. Do you believe this group, as currently constituted, maybe it's a few minor tweaks around the fringes, do you believe it's a championship contender? Do you believe this is a team that can win a title with the core of this team returning next season?
I'm going to answer it this way, Chris. Let's start with the idea that in an alternate universe, they made the deals that got these guys last summer or in October and not in February. In a universe where they had this roster from day one, even if you account for LeBron James getting injured and being out for a while, Anthony Davis being injured and out for a while, the cohesion that they could have built up over the course of the season, and just having a more functional roster from day one of the season, they wouldn't have been a 7th seed. They might have been 3rd, 4th, 5th, somewhere in there. Now, they might have still gotten beaten by the Nuggets in the second round if they were the 4 or 5, if they were in the conference finals, if they were, the 2, 3. But they would have had a better record. They would have had a less stressful season. And they would have gotten to the postseason with more reps with each other. And maybe D'Angelo Russell, look, I have all the same concerns with D'Angelo Russell as a player that you do, Chris. But we've both seen him have some really big moments, especially when he was in my backyard in Brooklyn, right? Like, the guy, the ice in his veins thing came for a reason. He was really great in the clutch, and he's a big moments guy. And there's a swagger there and a confidence there. And yes, it also comes with some other issues and lack of defense. But he wasn't the same player for the most part during his time with the Lakers because it's hard to play off LeBron and it's hard to learn to play off LeBron. If D'Angelo Russell's there from day one and Beasley and Vanderbilt and Hachimura and everybody else, maybe they've got a little bit more chemistry. The Nuggets had all the chemistry in the world. That core has been together for years already. So, and the Lakers had a new head coach this season to boot. So I'm going to just give the benefit of the doubt to the idea that if they ran it back with this group, with a full training camp and a full season behind them, Darvin Ham having a full season under his belt there as a head coach, not just the Lakers head coach, as a head coach, period. Yeah, this team could be a lot better next season. They could be a top 3 team in the West next season with one massive, massive caveat. Their 2 stars have to stay healthy, and one of them is turning 39 in December in what will be his 21st NBA season. If I could guarantee that LeBron was playing 70-plus games at a decent level, at the level we saw this season, and Anthony Davis would play 70 plus games at a level that he played this season, could they be top 2-3 in the West next season? They'd have a good shot, because outside of the Nuggets, Chris, everything else is a crapshoot. We don't know where the Grizzlies are going to be. Ja Morant suspended possibly half the season. We don't know where the Kings will be now that they come off their honeymoon and still have to grapple with the fact that they don't really play defense at a high level. And they're young. We don't know where the Suns are going to be. Is Ayton going to be back? Is Chris Paul going to be back? Is Kevin Durant going to get through a full season healthy? How are they going to rebuild that bench? So there's so much, and the Warriors, we know the volatility there. There is so much volatility throughout the West that running back this Laker team would at least give them that so-called puncher's chance again. And I will just say this as a closing thought on that. Because I wrote about this last December, I was firmly of the belief that you trade whatever you have to in the present or in the future to fix the present. They've traded one of those future picks. They kept the other one in reserve. I still believe that as long as you've got LeBron James, you owe it to yourself, to him, to basketball history, to do whatever it takes. It did work out. This was worth it. Whatever they gave up at midseason, they made the conference finals. They got swept, sure, but they made the conference finals, and it was worth it to do that and give up some of the future with respect to that one draft pick, as opposed to basically letting go of the rope, and they would have been, a lottery team. So I still believe as long as LeBron's there and as long as he has not retired, they still got to be all in.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And if the alternatives are keep the team together and run it back, or gut it to get Kyrie Irving, I would run it back, because you know what you're getting with this group. This group from mid-February on was one of the best teams in the NBA, and they were able to do it while LeBron James missed a whole chunk of games with injury. I think this group still has room to grow. This group still has room to get better. Perhaps the ceiling is higher with Kyrie Irving. That may be true, but the risk is far more significant, not just for next season, but in future seasons. Signing Kyrie Irving to a 4-year deal is dangerous. That has the potential to set back your franchise for years. If I'm the Lakers, I stick to my guns. I try to convince LeBron that bringing this group back is his best chance to win next season. All right, follow Howard Beck on social media. Read his stuff over at GQ Sports. Listen to him on all the Locked On Sports podcasts, including the one in Denver, if you want to get your Nuggets fix as well. Howard, appreciate the time, man.
Always a pleasure, my friend.